Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the podcast where a real statistics professor gives you sports betting tips. I am Professor Sides. You can follow me on Twitter at Professor Sides. Today is Monday, March 21st, 2022. And this episode covers all of today's college basketball games. For those of you wondering, Jake is on vacation. He will be back for our Sweet 16 and Elite 8 breakdowns later in the week. In case you're new here, I built a mathematical model that predicts what the spread and total should be for every Division I college basketball game. And as I go through the plays, remember the A picks are the ones I love, the B picks are the ones I like, and the C picks are the leans. However, please remember that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as I'd like to say the model will be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. And that's kind of what we saw a little bit this weekend. Saturday, just a truly awful day for me. Sunday bounced back. I went 5-3. I think Jake went 6-2. And of course, that's the way it's going to go. There are 5,000 college basketball games in the season. Given that I make a prediction on the side in total, that's 10,000 predictions over the course of the season. It's unfortunate when you have a bad set of 8 games in the tournament when everyone's watching, but that's that type of good and bad variance that I talk about on this episode every day. It's obviously more fun when we have the good variance, but sometimes we get the bad variance. Thankfully, we bounce back Sunday, and we'll look to keep that rolling again today. Before we get to today's slate, a reminder, please hit that like button if you're on YouTube, subscribe or follow if you aren't yet. It's the only way to ensure you don't miss any of the college basketball or MLB content. Share with a friend if you know others in the game. Drop a comment on Twitter or YouTube. We love those and try to respond to as many as we can. So let's get right to it. Today we've got the CBI. All of these games are in Daytona Beach. Starting up at 1 p.m. Eastern, Drake is a 6.5-point favorite against UNC Wilmington with a total of 138. UNC Wilmington, a team that I've had a tough time pegging, or the model has, I should say. And so the side is mostly a pass for me. The model does think Drake should be a 7-point favorite, but not a giant edge there. And fading UNC Wilmington has not been a profitable endeavor. Instead, I'm going to go over 138 with a B pick. UNC Wilmington was trending under as the regular season closed, but sometimes defense is optional in these tournaments, and they really just ran up and down the court last game. That doesn't get any extra weight in the model. It just gets the weight of the most recent game, but it does give me a little more confidence that we can get to the over. Both these teams are better on offense than they are on defense. Pace is going to be the only issue here, the only reason that we might not get to the total. But given that both teams in their previous matchups in this tournament just kind of rolled the ball out, let the kids get up and down the court, had a ton of possessions, that gives me confidence for the over. So I'm going to take over 138 for a B pick here to start us off in Drake and UNC Wilmington. Second game, Northern Colorado versus UNC Asheville. And of course, that's listed as 3:30 Eastern, but it'll just be 30 minutes after the first game. So we may end up with some of these games delayed as the day goes on. Northern Colorado is a 1.5-point favorite with a total of 155.5. The model thinks the total should be 153.6, which is an under edge, but both of these teams have been flying over the total lately. It's enough to make me leery, because in general, I would say 155.5 is probably just too many points. And if you just blindly take those giant numbers under, you're probably going to do okay. It's not dissimilar from the NIT game yesterday. If you notice that Virginia UNT total was 110, and that got over because it got to 110 in regulation. We knew that someone had to score to break that tie. Of course, it went way over in overtime. Yet the way these teams have played just makes this a pass on the total for me. So it's kind of conflicting information here. The model thinks a little bit under, but I don't think under is very smart here. Obviously, one of those will be right. I just don't know which one. Instead, I'm going to take Northern Colorado minus 1.5 as a B pick. The model thinks they should be closer to a 3-point favorite, at least 2.5. My numbers have been pretty good on both these teams all season. My numbers show that Northern Colorado is the better team by enough to back them. Thankfully, it's a short number, as if this number does get out into the 2.5 range, that lowers the confidence and/or just makes it a pass. I like Northern Colorado to win, but I don't want to lay too many points with them because this should be an evenly matched game. The third game of the tournament today here, these quarterfinals of the CBI, Middle Tennessee State versus Boston, scheduled to tip off at 6 p.m. Eastern. Middle Tennessee State is a 4.5-point favorite with a total of 140. It's an A pick for me on Middle Tennessee State -4.5. The model thinks it should be a little bit over 6. Everyone knows that Middle Tennessee State has been a public darling, and Boston has shown signs of life lately, but I think this line's a little disrespectful to Middle Tennessee State, given that the only really bad unit on the court is the Boston defense. I think Middle Tennessee State scores at will, and none of this even considers the fact that my numbers have overestimated Boston lately and underestimated Middle Tennessee all season. And so what that means is either the numbers have caught up and now the model is kind of pegging them correctly and the line should be 6 like I make it. If that's the case, then we've got value on this play only laying 4.5. Or maybe my numbers haven't caught up. And if that's the case, then that would imply that the line should actually be higher than 6. Maybe the line should be 6.5, 7, which even gives us more value. So I think there's a lot to like here with respect to laying the 4.5 with Middle Tennessee State. I think there's just a big talent mismatch there when they have the ball, and that's going to help us lengthen that lead out as the second half goes on. I think they take care of business against Boston. And the nightcap in the CBI, Ohio versus Abilene Christian. The model makes this a pick'em. Ohio's a 1.5-point favorite. Abilene Christian on the money line, maybe not a bad play, but I'd really be looking for plus odds to get good value. At plus 1.5, it's hard to get really excited there. Maybe if it gets to plus 2, that way you push if Ohio does win by 2, especially if you can get plus 2 -105. I try never to predict where the number will go. I think the line's pretty solid. I think the total's pretty solid too. The total's 141.5. The model thinks 142. I'll take the over 141.5. Only a C pick. I'll follow the defense's optional mantra with an ACU team that last year played a little slower and had a little bit better of a defense than this year. We especially saw that in the tournament last year. We saw that they can really grind a game out, play fantastic defense. But this year, that's not the way they're playing. They get up and down the court, have a lot of possessions. Their defense is only average, and their offense is above average. And so I will take the over if either one of these teams decides not to play defense. We think there will be a lot of possessions. I think we can get into the 140s here and get over 140.5, but not a very confident play for me. Only a C pick on this one. And then there are 2 games in the college basketball tournament, is what they're calling it this year. Both of these are true road games. Florida Gulf Coast at Coastal Carolina, 7 p.m. Eastern. Coastal is a 4-point favorite with a total of 145. The model thinks Coastal should be favored by 4.5. So I'm going to pass on the side there. Coastal has been pretty good to us this year, but fading Florida Gulf Coast hasn't been. If I could lay 3, I'd feel confident laying 3, maybe 3.5, but unless the number goes down there, I really think there's not a great edge on the side in this game personally. Instead, I'm going to look to the total. The model thinks the total should be 146.7, so it's a B pick for me on the over 145. Florida Gulf Coast plays really fast, and they have no defense. Even I've underestimated how many points they can score. That should only trend up in a lesser tournament. So it's kind of, as I mentioned, with Middle Tennessee State, either the numbers have caught up and this total should be more like 147, or if they haven't caught up, maybe it should be 148, 149. This one's got a good chance to get up towards 150. So I like the over 145 as a B pick. And then the other college basketball tournament game, 8 p.m. Eastern, USC Upstate at South Alabama. South Alabama, a 10-point favorite with a total of 142. The model thinks South Alabama should be an 11.5-point favorite and a total of 145. Both these teams have been great to back, but Upstate's defense is by far the worst unit on the court and on the road. I think this is a mismatch, so I'm going to play South Alabama -10 as a B pick. The model doesn't love laying numbers, so when it does, I'll back that. Both have been under of late, so I'm not sure what to do with the total edge. I kind of think it's a proceed at your own risk. And the model thinks over, and in a lot of these tournaments, defense is optional, but occasionally we will see a team in these tournaments decide they've got a bunch of young players, you know, they're all coming back, and they're going to focus on what they want to improve next year. And sometimes that is defense. The biggest concern for me is that South Alabama played a Southland team in the first round, and that game did not get to 140 points. And if you paid attention to all of the Southland, you know, defense is not even optional. It's discouraged in that conference. And so I don't know what to do with that. again, the model thinks over. This type of tournament lends itself to over, but that really makes me concerned that it's only a sample size of 1. But given that both teams have been under in general the last month, is more indicative than just that one game. South Alabama did play an over game in their conference tournament, but most of the end of their regular season, they were playing games, in the 50s and the 60s for teams, and that's not going to get you to 145 that the model thinks. So I don't really know what to do with the total. When you see that total posted in the sheet, over is what it says, but just given the trends, it makes me a little nervous. I just think South Alabama laying the 10 is the safer bet here. It is a large number, but I think it's a big mismatch. I think they can run away in the second half. If not, hopefully we can get some crazy late fouls maybe to get us over. So there are a couple different ways we can win that pick, which is why only a B pick. Hard to say an A pick given that many points, but I do think South Alabama is the side you want to be on. And that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Picks with the Professor. A reminder, check out the Google Sheet for predictions on the website. That is www.pickswiththeprofessor.com. I'll get you that link in case you've lost it. If you haven't done so yet, click that subscribe button to ensure all the college basketball content. And coming up soon, MLB content is dropped right into your feed. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.